Hey guys, it's Linux Benchmarks here. In today's video, I wanted to teach you guys how to install another Linux distro that I use daily, which you can see right now, which is called Pop! OS. It is if you guys don't know what Pop! OS is, it's just a Ubuntu based distro that runs off the LTS version of Ubuntu at the moment, which is Ubuntu 22.04. But the good thing about Pop! OS is that they have a specific GNOME version that's being used. That's still, it is an old version of GNOME, but they still update it to it's like the latest security versions of GNOME, because it's on like 42.9 right now, which I did not know could exist. Is that such high of a GNOME version with such an old GNOME version itself? But with Pop! OS, you get a certain type of customization that's applied to GNOME that really makes Pop! OS look just unique, you could say. But one of the best things I would say about Pop! OS at the moment is that since they're not updating the LTS version of Ubuntu to a newer Ubuntu version, they have to backport most of their packages so that it's still rather new. So one of the good things about Pop! OS is that they've continued to update their packages when it comes to their Linux kernel and their Mesa packages. So recently, Pop! OS got a pretty big update where it got, I think, the Linux kernel 6.4.6, I'm pretty sure was yes, it was 6.4.6. So they updated the kernel to 6.4.6, and they also updated the Mesa to Mesa 23.1.4. So if you are a AMD user, you no longer have to use like the kiosk PPA anymore. Sorry if I'm butchering the word kiosk. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's just how I pronounce it. But you no longer will have to use that PPA for Pop! OS. So then, now that you know the rundown of Pop! OS, and if you guys actually want to install it, which is why you probably clicked on this video, I'm going to teach you guys how to install it, as I'm going to install it on my laptop. I have a pretty old laptop, I would say. It's not that old, but in terms of like specs wise, it is pretty low end. It is a Acer laptop with an i5 a 5005U processor. And it has 8 gigabytes of RAM. It actually came with 4 gigabytes of RAM started off, but I was able to find an extra RAM stick that was actually like the exact same brand from another laptop, and I was able to upgrade it to 8 gigs, so that was really good. But recently with the Acer laptop, I've been running, as you can see here, I've been running Fedora Budgie desktop, which has been a very good desktop environment to try out, and it's very light, I would say. So if you have a pretty shitty low-end laptop, I would definitely give the Budgie desktop a try, as the main developers have actually came back, and there's been some reorganizations within Budgie and Solus, which is another Linux distribution, which I did try on this laptop and it was good, but I then found out that Fedora actually has a Budgie spin, so I was like, why not? I should install it on my laptop and use Fedora, as I'm well versed in the Fedora like ecosystem when it comes to like commands and all that in the terminal. But I've been really enjoying Budgie, so if you do have a low-end laptop, I would definitely suggest that you guys try out the Budgie desktop. As for RAM usage, I think it was around 1 gigabyte of RAM was being used on a fresh boot of Budgie, which is honestly kind of crazy to me, that a desktop environment that looks this clean and has such cool like the animations, the Android like 7 aesthetic that they're going for is really good as well. Can have 1 gigabyte of RAM being used with like nothing else open. Just kind of wild to me. So one of the first things you guys want to grab is, of course, the Pop! OS ISO, as you'll be needing that to flash it onto a USB. So of course, you just want to search Pop! OS, and you want to go to the system76.com website of Pop! OS, as they are the company that looks after Pop! OS, and you just want to click download. Now there'll be three options that will come up. If you have a Raspberry 4, you can grab this version of Pop! OS, and then if you're a NVIDIA user, which I'm guessing the majority of users that are coming to Linux probably do have a NVIDIA card, so you guys want to select the NVIDIA version, and all this means is basically that Pop! OS will include the NVIDIA drivers pre-installed on your computer, so that you don't actually have to go and download the NVIDIA drivers. But if you did select like the normal one, it's not like you could go and install the video drivers, because you can. You don't actually need to grab this version. It's just, you know, it's nice to have that option. So that like you don't have to install the drivers. So for me, since I am using a laptop with an Intel system and an Intel integrated graphics, I'll be grabbing the normal version, because Intel uses the Mesa and the I'm pretty sure it uses Mesa for playing games. So I'm gonna be grabbing this one, and you guys just want to download it. Now, if you guys don't know what like app to use to flash the ISO onto a USB stick, there's one that there's two options on Windows that you can grab. One is called Rufus, and then the other one is called Balena Etcher. So if you want to go search for Rufus, is this one here, and then we have Balena Etcher, which is here. And this also works on Linux. So if you want to use this one for Linux, when you want to flash a different distro, you definitely can. But there is better options, I would say, on Linux already. That even like Pop! OS includes one by default, which I might actually already have installed. Yeah, it's called here. It's like it looks like a popsicle almost. That's what I think. That's what I call it. Is like an icicle popsicle logo. But yeah, you guys can use this one, or you can use Rufus, which is also a pretty damn good flasher for Windows. All right, as you can see here, my ISO is actually done downloading. So I'm just going to use the one that's provided by Pop! OS already, which is called Popsicle. And you just want to choose the image, go to your downloads, and then select Pop! OS, and then go next. Select the USB, like the partition of it, click next, and it's going to ask for your password, and then yeah, there you go, it will start flashing, and I'll see you guys after it's done flashing it to the USB. Alright, as you guys can see here, I've done flashing Pop! OS on the USB stick. So the next thing you guys want to do, of course, is plug it into your computer. And one of the things that I would say about most Linux distributions, in they mostly all support secure boot, but that's one thing I'd be worried about. If let's say your USB device doesn't get detected with your BIOS, it may be because you have CSM, it's called CSM, enabled in your BIOS, or it's not enabled, and so the USB sticks don't come up because they're not legacy supported. That's one of the things that in my motherboard I had to turn on in my BIOS was CSM support. But back to secure boot as well. If you install like a Linux distribution like Nobora, I'm pretty sure Nobora doesn't support secure boot, so you would have to turn it off, but I'm pretty sure Pop! OS does support secure boot properly, so you can leave that on your BIOS, but just be wary if, like, let's say it doesn't boot into the USB properly. It might be because you have secure boot enabled. As you can see here, don't be alarmed about this. This is just systemd booting up, basically loading everything for you, almost like just ticking off boxes for things to load. And if any errors come up, I know there's a couple of errors that might come up for me, which doesn't really matter. I think it was something about my drive not being like mounted properly or something like that, but then it mounts properly. It was one little error that comes up every time I boot the system, but it like fixes itself anyways. So don't be alarmed. This is perfectly normal. As you can see here, it's just sitting here basically right now because it's just waiting to like be instructed to do the next thing, which will happen very soon. And as I said before, this laptop is pretty slow, so like Pop! OS on my main desktop, when I install it, it goes through so much faster than my laptop. And with my laptop, it takes at least, like, I would say maybe like 10 to 15 minutes to actually install Pop! OS, while on my desktop it may take only like 5 minutes to install it, just because of how fast, you know, I have like an NVMe drive. I have a pretty fast processor and GPU that can like just go through it really fast. As you can see here, it's now loaded a lot more. Now we're actually starting off with the systemd checks when like things are actually like starting. Alright, and as you guys can see here, we have finally booted into Pop! OS, and it's going to welcome you with the installation of Pop! OS. So you just want to go through this installation. It's really simple. You know, you get your language, so we're going to select English. I'm going to select Australia, that's where I'm from, and then my keyboard layout. And then I'm going to do a clean install. Now, if you want to set up a dual boot for Pop! OS, I'm not going to do a tutorial of how to do that in this video, as since Pop! OS uses systemd instead of grub for like booting up the system, You can't really set up a dual boot for Pop! OS. You can, but not with just doing like a regular if you want to set up a dual boot with Pop! OS without having to do manual partitioning. You're gonna have to have like Pop! OS on one drive and then Windows on the other drive because yeah, setting up a dual boot on one like let's say SSD or hard drive, whatever it may be, you're gonna have to do some manual partitioning in Pop! OS, while most other distributions like Fedora-based ones or Arch or basically any other Linux distro that doesn't use systemd can run a dual boot off of one drive. But if you want to use Pop! OS, I would suggest that you install Pop! OS on a separate drive so that you're able to choose which one to boot from. But for me, I'm going to do a clean install, and I'm just going to select the 120 gigabyte SSD. I'm going to click erase and install. Then we're going to create a user account. This is just a offline account if you didn't know. This isn't like a Microsoft account where you have to sign in with an actual online account. It's just an offline user account. So I'm just going to call it Ned. Actually, I'll call it Neddy actually. I don't know why I just like calling it that. And then my password's going to be nice and short because it's a laptop. I don't have anything important on it, honestly. And then if you want, you can encrypt your drive, for safety, stuff like that. Like let's say someone, steals your laptop or whatever, they won't be able to grab any of your files because it will be encrypted and it'll be on like read only, I'm pretty sure. It says here, encrypting this drive protects data from being read by others with physical access to this device. Drive encryption may slightly affect read and write speed when performing intense tasks. The encryption password will be required each time you turn on this device or restart. So for me, I'm not going to encrypt my drive because that's just not something that I'm all about. I don't think anyone will steal my laptop. I live very far away from like a city where someone could like just come into a house and steal my laptop. That's very unlikely to happen. But as you can see here, now it's going to start to extract the files and install Pop! OS for you. As we can see here, it's now just configuring our system. If you guys want, you can actually just look at this, or you can look into the terminal of what it's actually doing, which might be a bit confusing for some people. But basically, it's like unpacking and configuring a bunch of things with a bunch of Debian files, creating a bunch of directories for you, like your root directory and your home directory, just getting everything set up for you so that you don't really have to do any of this manually. And if you guys also don't know, System 76 is creating their own desktop environment for Linux, as they've been using, like I said before, they've been using GNOME as their default desktop environment, but now they're actually building their own desktop environment called Cosmic, and it should be coming out this time this year, maybe like around the end of the year. There's supposed to be a alpha or beta that's supposed to start sometime, where people who are running Pop! OS, or really anyone, can actually run it. But for the majority of people that run Pop! OS can like test it out and see if they like it. I actually did try it on my laptop a couple of weeks back on a it's called like an Epoch version of it, which basically is just like I think it's like every month they like bring in the newest patches from all the developers who have been working with Cosmic OS on the Cosmic desktop, and it's so far it's very still like it's like very close to like a user being able to use it, but there's still like a couple things that need to be switched around and changed and still need to be implemented to make the Cosmic desktop a good desktop environment for the general user to use. All right, and as you guys can see here, now it's telling us to continue setting up by either you can shut down or you can restart the device. So we're going to restart the device, and basically after you restart, Pop! OS doesn't say about unplugging the USB like some other distros do. So what I usually do is after I see the terminal screen of when restarting like ends and my computer actually restarts, I quickly unplug the USB, as for my BIOS, it's going to choose my USB as my first device to boot into. So if I didn't unplug this USB, it would just automatically pick the Pop! OS install USB again, which I don't want that to happen. We actually want to boot into Pop! OS. So you guys want to restart your device and then actually boot into Pop! OS. And as we can see here, now we're actually booted into Pop! OS, and it says, welcome to Pop! OS. Continue the desktop setup by choosing your preferred layout. So you can choose no dock, which I wouldn't recommend. The default version of Pop! OS, Pop! OS's like dock is that it extends to the edges. Or you can do doesn't extend to the edges, so it's like almost like a kind of like Mac OS, how they have their dock. So we'll keep it like this, I guess. We'll click next, and then we also have the options of show workspace button, which is up at the top left. So we're going to turn that off, as I don't work in multiple workspaces. I only work in one. But if you guys use workspaces, that's awesome. I would keep that enabled. There's also a button down here to show the workspaces. Then there's a show applications button, which is just another way of basically pulling up your application like section for launching apps. But usually you can just use the super key, I think. Actually, no, you would just select down here to open your applications. But you can also change the date and time, so you can put it on the left if you want to, or you can put it on the right. I like it to leave it centered, as when it's not there, it feels kind of like just blank and empty. So I kind of have to leave it there. But that's good, because that's like the default way of, I guess, your eyes look up, is you just look up to the clock, the date. Then it tells you about like open and switch applications from launcher. Press super key or use an icon, the dot to display the launcher search field. Use arrow keys to quickly switch between open windows, or type the name of the application to launch it. The launcher makes navigating the desktop faster and more fluid. So if we do super, which would just be this one down here in the dock, it will bring up our search. So we can type like Firefox, and then some other things may come up. There's also some quick launches if you want to, like Control 1. Like that's supposed to do that? Really? No? Okay. Well, we'll go next. Then we can talk about gestures for easier navigation. You can use 4-finger swipe left to open workspaces and Windows Overview, 4-finger swipes right to open applications, and 4 fingers swipe up or down to switch between workspaces. Swipe with 3 fingers to switch between windows. So this is a cool GNOME thing with gestures, where you can just like move across workspaces really quickly with like multiple finger gesture movements on your touchpad if you have a laptop like I do. And then you get to pick between light and dark. So if you want a light mode, you can. It does work decently well, and it does look quite nice, but I like dark mode because I don't want my eyes to bleed. Since I live in my dark room a lot, so don't want my eyes to bleed. We also have a location services, so this is turned off by default on Pop! OS. So this will just basically stop applications like, for example, Firefox from if it wants to like search up things with Google Maps, and Google wants to know your location, so it can grab like weather or something like that for you. But yeah, it's turned off by default, so that's actually a really good thing. That just shows another thing about Linux, how basically location is not really a thing that's turned on in Linux. It's very privacy friendly, so that if you don't want that stuff to be shown, you don't have to. Next will be time zones. So for me, I'm gonna do Melbourne, so you can get the right time. And then if you want to, you can connect to some online accounts, or maybe some like email stuff, or maybe some enterprise things. I'm not going to do any of that. And then yeah, we're all done. So now you've done the quick setup, I guess you could say. The next thing I'd probably go into is doing updates. So you want to open the Pop Shop, as this is basically the store for grabbing the majority of your apps, either it be .debian apps or flatpak applications. And like I said, you basically want to do your updates first, as that's probably the most important thing. So this little loading icon at the top right is checking for updates for us, and we basically just want to sit here till some updates start appearing. And as you can see here, the Pop Shop was able to find roughly 431 megabytes of updates to do, and around 163 components to update. And if you click on like the operating system updates, you can check all the pieces like libraries that it's going to be updating for you. Probably the most important ones, like there's a bunch of language packs here that needs to be updated for like GNOME, a bunch of backend libraries for like evolution calendars and some like data server stuff. So we got the some Mesa libraries that need to be updated, some GStreamer plugins, some GTK libraries that need to be updated, and basically also the Linux kernel 6.4.6 update. And basically, yeah, you just want to click update all, and it will do all the updates for you. Now, one of the things with how Linux updates usually is that you'll do these updates, and then it will say like there's no updates available, and the next time you boot your PC, it will actually install the updates for you. Which is a kind of a very handy thing to do, as you know, if you ever run Windows before, and how it does updates is usually it will bug you about doing an update, and then it will sit on like a blue, roughly a blue screen with like a loading icon of it doing the updates, which usually doesn't take that long, but in some cases it may take a while if you're doing like a big update, or like your first Windows update. It might take a while to install those updates. And basically, you'll just be sitting looking at a blue screen, and you won't be able to do anything on your PC till it's done updating. While on Linux side, you can update it, and then you can do everything else you want to do on the computer. And then when you're done, you can turn it off, and then the next day you can turn it on, and all the updates are actually like installed for you. And you didn't really have to do anything necessarily. You just had to download the updates, and that was it. Alright, as you guys can see here, I've actually installed all the updates. So now what I'm going to do is do a quick restart, and I'll tell you guys the next things that you possibly could do with Pop! OS. So now that we're back into Pop! OS, probably the next thing that I would do is go into your settings, which is already pinned to your dock. And as we can see here, we've got Bluetooth, which I'm going to disable because I don't really use Bluetooth on my laptop. We've got the desktop settings. So one of the first things you can do is the super key action. So basically the Windows key, or what Linux users like to call it, is a super key. There's another word for it as well that people like to call it, but I'm just going to call it a super key. So by default, it's going to launch the launcher, which is like that search function, but you can change it to applications if you want to, so that it will launch the applications. And then also there's a enable top left hot corner for workspaces, which basically is just a quick launch for enabling the workspace option, which is this button here. So if you enable this and you go to the top left, it will activate that. Then what you also have is the top bar again in the Windows control. So if you guys want the was it the maximize button for Pop! OS, there's a button here that says show maximize button, and I always enable this on Pop! OS when I install it, because I want the maximize button. I don't want to really have to drag my window up here to maximize it. It's just like, I just want to hit the maximize button. It's a very important one, and I understand that like lots of developers don't really care about that because they either use like window managers, or like what's it called, tiling managers, and that's perfectly fine. But I think you should, if any System 76 developer is looking at this, and they're working on the Cosmic desktop, I would say that please leave the maximize button alone. Because I don't want to move my windows to maximize them. And I mean, it's not that it's a hard thing, it's just like I think the default user who comes from Windows will expect a maximize button, and when they see that it doesn't, they might get a bit confused, and then they might run away without even looking in the settings where it actually lives, which is in the desktop options. But as as we continue here, you can go to the background, and Cosmic has a bunch of stock, not really stock. I mean, they have a couple stock wallpapers in here, but they also have some, their own designed wallpapers as well that you can choose from. I'm going to choose this one because I do like this one a decent amount. Then we also have your appearance, which is, you've already gone through this. Same with dock. You can like extend it. We're going to leave it unextended. We can do dock visibility as well. Probably the other thing I would do is the icon click action. So when you click on an app, usually like right now, it's not doing anything because if we need to switch it to launch, minimize, or preview windows. So now if we click it, it will be minimized. If we click it again, it will be maximized. And then if there's more than 2 windows, if you click it, you can actually preview the window and then click on the window that you want to bring up. Something like Steam, for example, will bring up like 3 or 2 windows usually, so that you can actually pick the windows to launch. And then same goes with dock visibility. You can do always visible, which is right now, or we can do always hide, which will hide the dock, or you can do intelligently hide, which is what I would do. And basically, the dock will hide when any window overlaps the dock area. So if we pull our mouse cursor to the bottom, the dock will appear. But if we open a window right now, the dock is hiding because the application is maximized. But if we minimize it, then the dock will actually appear. And then the next one is our dock size. So if we want to, we can change it to a small dock. As you can see, that's how small it looks, very small, I would say. But you can also do a custom size if you want even smaller, let's say like 20, which is so bloody small, all the way down there. But I'll leave it on 36 because that's a pretty alright size for right now. And we can also position it on different sides. So if you want, you can put it on the left side, you can put it on the right side if you want to. There you go, there it is. But we'll just leave it on the bottom because I just like having the panel at the top and the dock at the bottom. It just makes more sense to me. But whatever floats your boat. And then also the dock alignment and dock and icon alignment on the screen. So we can also, if we want to, we can put the dock on the far left side or on the end side. So either left or right or center. We also go to workspaces, and by default, the workspaces is the dynamic workspaces. But we usually, for me, I'll bring a fixed number of workspaces and I'll just bring it to 1 because I only have 1 workspace. I don't work on multiple workspaces. So the next thing that you could do is go into your sound settings and select your output and input and your system sounds as well. If you have any applications open like Firefox, then it will show up in the volume levels where you can customize the volume. Now, if you are running GNOME 44 on something like Fedora, usually you could actually customize the sound in the quick settings of GNOME, but since Pop! OS uses a older version of GNOME, which is 42, that wasn't implemented yet, so you're going to have to go into your sound settings to change like an application sound, or like if you want to pick a different output and input, you would have to go into your settings for sound. But as you can see here, there's output for selecting speakers or your IEMs or headphones, whatever it be, and then input for your microphone. And you can change like the gain on it, or if you want to like put, I don't know, your headphones to the balancing to the left or the right, whatever you fancy. The next thing is the power. So for me, I won't dim the screen. And I'll set the screen blank to never, and then the automatic suspend. I'll turn all of these off so that basically it can never go to sleep, because usually when I'm watching something on my like Jellyfin server, for example, it will like dim the screen, or sometimes it will go to sleep. I don't know if that happens anymore, but that's because I just like I turn this stuff off so that that won't annoy me. And then the next thing you know is your screen display. Now for me, I'm doing a mirror at the moment because I'm capturing the laptop screen and I need to do a mirror for the capture card so that it actually shows up on my main PC for you guys. Usually it'll be on join display, and there'll be like, different options for resolution, and then like refresh rate, and then there's also fractional scaling, and there's also the high DPI daemon, which is already enabled. The next thing you can go into is your mouse and touchpad. You also got mouse acceleration, so I would turn that off if you want to play, like games or anything like that, like FPS games. I would turn off mouse acceleration, or if in general, like mouse acceleration makes you feel like weird when you move your mouse around, that I would definitely turn this off, like I do on my main PC. But I use a touchpad, so that doesn't really matter. Probably one of the other things is touchpad already works with, like, I think tapping already works, if I'm pretty sure. Yeah, tapping on a touchpad already works in Pop! OS, so that's good. And yeah, that's probably it. The last thing I would probably do is like date and time. You can change your time format. So if you're into like, 24-hour time, you could definitely do that. Or if you want to change your time zone, any of that, or maybe your language, you want to change that. There's also accessibility options. So maybe if, you have any disabilities, anything like that, there's a couple of things that may help you with that type of stuff. I'm not really versed into the accessibility options, so I won't go into that. But the next thing you could do is go into OS and upgrade and recovery. And basically what this is if you, let's say, Pop! OS stops working either by user error or maybe an update happens, one way you can fix this is by creating a recovery partition, which a lot of other distros don't offer. I know there's some other distros that include, I think it's called like time something. It's basically just like a backup thing, which will just create a time of when you backed up and you can go back to that point in time of your OS if something goes wrong. And basically this is what Pop! OS does for you. So if if you have an issue, you can easily boot into the Pop! OS recovery and do a restore installation, which will just basically reinstall Pop! OS for you, but it will keep your home directory, which includes all your files like photos, videos, downloads, and then it will also keep anything that's within like your home directory. So also your flatpak applications will be kept. And yeah, it will just basically just reinstall the under the hood stuff, which is your root directory. It'll reinstall all that stuff, and then it will keep your home directory for you. All right, as you guys can see here, the recovery partition is actually done installing. So now, like I said, if Pop! OS, if you have an issue where the computer like will no longer boot up, or like I don't know, you may change your root directory to like read only, and you don't know how to like you fucked around a terminal or something, you guys can go into the Pop! OS recovery and then do a restore installation, and then your Pop! OS will basically be reinstalled for you. There's also the system and application updates, which by default, the automatic updates are ticked off for you, and there's also an automatically install. So if we tick this on, then we can set up a either it be weekdays, or you can specify a specific date, and then also a specific time of when it should automatically install these updates for you. But I usually don't do that. I just install them whenever I feel like it. And then it will also remind you of when updates actually become available. So you can change this from daily, weekly, or monthly, just based on like, how much you actually want to update your computer. And that's basically it for settings. Now, the next thing that I would do is actually uninstall a bunch of applications that are pre-installed on Pop! OS, as it does include a couple applications that are basically just Office apps that are kind of like replacements to the Microsoft Office apps. So there's LibreOffice Math. I won't be using any of these, but if you do actually want to try these out, I would definitely recommend trying the Libre or Libra Office apps out, as they are really good Office applications to use for like if you're if you have a type of job where you have to create documents or PowerPoints or graphs for your company or whatever. This can be some really good apps, as they do support a lot of the file formats and fonts that the Windows Office apps use. But for me personally, I'm gonna uninstall them all. I'm also gonna install Geary, which if you don't know what Geary is, it's just a mail client. So if you want to, you can set up some, you can connect your, I think you can connect your Google account to Geary, and you can grab your Gmail mail for you. But most people use like Firefox and Chrome for accessing their mail. Doing all that stuff. I'll also uninstall Weather, as the GNOME Weather app doesn't support my location of where I live, or even remotely close to where I live, as I'm pretty sure it only the GNOME Weather only shows cities. I'm pretty sure. Maybe in America it's different, or in Europe it might be different as well. But the next thing I would do is actually uninstall videos as well, as the Debian version of videos might be very confusing for some people, as a lot of the codecs that are included for videos don't work properly on AMD hardware. If you're on a NVIDIA card, you should be all fine when it comes to watching videos and stuff with the codecs that it uses, which are from GStreamer, I'm pretty sure. But we're going to replace it with VLC because VLC is a pretty cool video player, I would say. And same goes for the image viewer. I'm going to uninstall the GNOME image viewer. The image viewer that's pre-installed in here is perfectly fine. I just prefer one of the newer image viewers, which are going to be used in GNOME by default, which is going to be called loupe. So the first thing we're going to do is replace our video with VLC. Now there's two that will pop up here. One is a .debian and one is a flatpak. I don't know why they showed two. It might get really confusing for some people, but I'm pretty sure this is the flatpak version because it says up to 1 gigabyte. As flatpak has a decent amount of dependencies. As if you don't know what flatpak is, it is a sandboxed environment of an application that has its own dependencies built in. So that it doesn't use the system dependencies and the app will actually like work as intended from the developers. It kind of dodges that that area of where the developer has to coincide with lots of different Linux distributions for the app to work, and that's where you might get into issues of where running a specific application on your specific Linux distro gets updated too quickly, something like Arch, and then you might enter a issue where the app will stop working or some library will just stop working out of nowhere, and that's mostly because of the dependencies that Arch users may get updates quicker, and then the VLC app will just stop working. And this is where flatpak mostly resolves this, as it includes its own dependencies. So this is the flatpak version that we're installing right now. If you back up here, we can see a progress bar. I don't really know why the progress bar is in the search field. I think it's just a limitation of the elementary OS store. If you guys don't know, the pop shop is actually the elementary store, which is also a Pacific Linux distro called Elementary OS, which does get updated, but hasn't really had a overhaul in a while because it lost like a decent amount of its developers and people that were like funding it. A lot of that was lost, and they've only just now released like their newest version. It took them around like a year or two for them to fully bring out Elementary OS 7, but they use the Elementary OS store, which is what Pop! OS uses. Now, hopefully that they either Pop! OS switches away from the Elementary OS store, or they stay with Elementary OS, and Elementary OS fixes some issues and improves some of the UI, like having a progress bar in this area, because I don't really want to have to click into here. But one thing I have noticed recently with the Pop! OS or the Pop Shop / Elementary OS store is that the Pop Shop has gotten really fast when it comes to just clicking on a page and searching for things. As before, it was rather stuttery. It was like freezing a lot when you searched for things. But now it's actually rather smooth. And as you can see here, VLC has been installed. So now what we want to do is go back to our settings. We want to go to the very bottom and go to our default applications. And as you can see here, Pop! OS has already selected this as the default video and music player. And then probably the next thing that we will do is we'll install loupe, which is another image viewer. Now this is not necessary, but this is one of the newer GTK4 based image viewers that are going to be used on GNOME 45, I'm pretty sure. It's going to be used as the default image viewer for GNOME. So I really enjoy using this image viewer, as it's just a lot more newer and it gets more updates, and it supports a lot more features and file formats for images. And one of the great things about flatpak is that usually like after the first time installing a flatpak application, it will just install relatively quickly after that, as the majority of the time when you install your first like flatpak application, it will grab like all of the dependencies for that Flatpak application, and then onwards it will just get quicker and quicker when it comes to installing an application, as the dependencies are already there for like that specific application you're trying to download. So you can see here, loupe didn't take that long to install this time versus VLC, which took a bit longer as it had more dependencies it needed to download. One of the other things that you could do is I like to pin my system monitor to my dash. So if you want to pin an application, you'll just go up to a specific app. I have to do 2-finger tap or right click, and you just want to do pin to dash. And probably the next thing that I would do would be to install some applications that you actually want to use. Things like Spotify. There's Spotify right there, and that works amazing on Linux. Spotify does support Linux quite well. Not as well, but they do support it quite well. One app that I actually use a lot is actually called Parabolic, which recently got updated. And what this app does is just allows you to download YouTube videos, and it will convert it into the format that you want. So you just grab like a YouTube URL and you just paste it in, and it will download like a video or audio, whichever one you want to choose. If we click download here, I can show you guys what it does. It's very, very cool application, as in the past when I used Windows, I would have to find the online options of like converting a video into like an MP3 or MP4. But there's an actual application that does it for you with like using your PC hardware, as converting videos today on PC hardware is actually like pretty easily to do. Unless you have a really bad laptop, it won't take that long to convert a video with your hardware. And as we can see here, Parabolic is now actually like opened. And yeah, it just says here, download media, add a video, audio, or playlist URL to start downloading. So we can click add a download, and we can just paste in like a media URL. So if we wanted to, we could open Firefox. And then we could go to YouTube if we want to. Just go to youtube.com. And then if we wanted to, you know, we could grab, let's see here, need to find something relatively short. Here's this lo-fi music video that goes for around 5 minutes. So we'll just click share, we'll copy that, go back to Parabolic, go add. It's already copied it. And then it's going to add it, and it's going to ask for us, you know, what file type do you want to use, what quality, where you want to put it. So I'll put it just in, I'll put it in my videos, and then we go download. As we can see here, we can either watch it from this bar, or we can go and open up a little terminal window, which will tell us what it's doing. Now, it seems like it had a permission error. So what this basically means is that the one of the issues with Flatpak is that sometimes it won't have access to specific parts of your operating system. That's one of the security points of Flatpak. So one of the next applications we're going to have to grab is Flatseal, which basically allows you to change permissions of each Flatpak application that you have installed. So as we can see here, we have Flatseal. We can just click install, and it shouldn't take that long. It just, yep, there you go. Then click open, and we basically want to add a permission to Parabolic, which is really easy. There's just simple toggles for enabling the file system permissions. All right, and what I had to do was basically in Flatseal, when you open Flatseal, you want to go to Parabolic. And you don't want to do these. You actually want to do the other files. And as you can see here, it says xdg -download. What we want to do is basically just add xdg-videos. We can add other ones as well. If you do xdg, it will come up with other options here of other file directories that you can let Parabolic use when it comes to downloading, you know, converting videos and stuff like that. So as you can see here, it's done. If we click play, it should open VLC, I'm guessing. And if we turn down this music, now it's working. And yeah, this is just you know, some lo-fi, no copyright music, which I really doubt. I bet this is copyright music. I've downloaded plenty of non-copyrighted music, and I get copyrighted by YouTube, so that's really cool that people state that, and then I get copyrighted. But that's just one example of one app that I do use when I want to download any, let's say, music or videos, for example. The next thing that we could set up is Steam, which is a very important application that lots of people like to use for playing games. So we go to Steam, and you have two choices. You can either install the flatpak version of Steam, but if you're not well versed in the flatpak version of Steam, I would install the Debian version of Steam, which is the one I always install, as the Debian version is kind of like the system package version, which has permission to, like, let's say if you want to add a second drive to Steam, then you would want to install the system package version, as the flatpak version doesn't have that permission to see that second drive, and you would have to change it in Flatseal. So you want to choose the Debian version if you want to add like a second drive. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to install it. It's going to ask for a password. And then it will just download it for us. We can have a look where it's at. And as you can see here, now Steam is actually installed. Now we can't open the application yet, as Steam has to set up the, it's kind of like the installer for Steam. So it's going to download Steam for us and like install the right dependencies that are needed. And this won't take long usually, depending on, your internet. It might take a little bit, or it might not take a little bit. And as we can see here, Steam is now installed. So you now just want to log into your account. For me, I'm gonna scan a QR code on my phone, as that's probably the easiest way to do it. And then after we sign in here, and now we look at that, we have Steam installed. So probably the next thing that I would actually do is enabling Proton. If you guys are new to Linux and you want to play games, if that's your main thing you want to do on Linux, then you want to go to your settings, you want to go to your downloads. Now, if you're on NVIDIA, I would keep the shader precaching enabled and allow background processing of Vulkan shaders. Now, what allow background processing of Vulkan shaders does is it basically it will download the newest shaders for the games that you have installed. So when you click play and you load the Vulkan shader, you won't get as much stutters when it comes to on a NVIDIA card. While on AMD, you don't need to use shader precaching, as with Mesa 23.1, we have the thing called the graphics pipeline, which is enabled on NVIDIA as well. And you can disable shader precaching for a NVIDIA card. You can. But some games, how they load the shaders, you might experience some heavy stutters on the normal NVIDIA driver, like the stable DKMS proprietary NVIDIA driver. When playing something like Apex, for example, it will basically load the shaders with your CPU until all the shaders are loaded, and then you can click play and you won't get any stutters. But lots of people who turn it off and then they play a game, they get a bunch of stutters and they're like, what the hell is happening? Well, on AMD, how it loads shaders is completely different, where it kind of loads it not at draw time, but you'll see it when playing games on Mesa 23.1. You'll see the textures like load in the front of your eyes like really quickly. But it doesn't use your CPU to load the shaders, which is a weird thing. I don't know why NVIDIA does that. The way it loads shaders is a bit odd in my opinion. It should just do it the same way AMD does it. I bet they can actually definitely implement something like that, and probably implement it way better than the way the Valve engineers did it. But back to this, I would keep this enabled. If any games, like, you can turn it off, play a game. If you experience stutters, I would turn this back on, test if you get stutters anymore, but like I would turn it off, and then restart your client. Actually, you don't have to restart your client. But the next thing I would do is probably go to compatibility, and I would enable Steam Play for all other titles. And we'll do restart later, and we'll select just the stable Proton. And what the stable Proton version is it's just basically the newest stable version of Proton, which is 8.0-3. And I wouldn't use Proton Experimental unless you have to, basically. If a game doesn't work, I would properties on the game and force compatibility to Proton Experimental, and then you would retest it, see if it works. But by default, you should just need to use Proton 8.0-3. That should be good enough for the majority of games that we play today. Proton has gotten so good now that you don't have to use Proton Experimental that much unless it's like a brand new game and it may have issues on the stable Proton version. So back to what I said before, if a game doesn't work with Proton 8.0-3, I would try experimental. If that doesn't work, then I would probably try the Proton 7 version, which is just an older version of Proton, which has helped some people. Most of the time, it will help people that are on NVIDIA systems. As for some reason, I don't know why, there's just a lot of issues with using a NVIDIA card on Linux with Proton, where you have to use older versions of Proton because like something isn't working properly. Because the majority of games that I play, I can just use the normal Proton 8 version, and the only game I use experimental for is really Halo Infinite because there's some little graphical issues on Halo Infinite with somehow the textures load on the Spartans. But that's basically how to set up Steam. After you've done that, yeah, if you guys want to force a Proton version, then I would go to compatibility, force, and then select your different versions of Proton. Of course, the other things that you can install would be like Discord. So you could just search for Discord. As you can see here it is. Now this is the flatpak version. Now flatpak version of Discord isn't the official packaged version of Discord. This is a community maintained version. And same kind of goes with the Pop! OS one, but this is just a Debian one, so this is probably the official Discord version. And this is the one you want to get if you want like Discord rich presence to work, which is the thing that shows up under your name, and it shows what game you're playing, or if like you're listening to music or something like that. So I would install the Debian version of Discord. Some of the other apps that I love to use on a daily basis with any Linux distro, you've got like Converter. Oh my god, Converter. And then what Converter does is it just lets you convert images from different file formats. So if you have like a PNG and you want to change that image to a JPEG, you would use this app for converting to it. Usually like I will convert like WebP images, as WebP doesn't really support some applications that I use. So that's the only time I would really use Converter. Another one is called Flat Sweep, which is really useful if you use Flatpak packages. And what this does is it's able to delete unused dependencies that you don't use anymore in your your Flatpak directory. So I did this the other day on both of my PCs, and I had about 4 gigabytes of unused dependencies that weren't being used with the apps that I use in Flatpak. And it's a simple app where you just click clean and it will just delete those files for you. Basically, it's kind of like just like temporary files. So this is a really cool app that lets you just, delete it. And as you can see here, there is no leftover data found because I haven't uninstalled an application that uses dependencies that I no longer actually use because I don't have the app installed. That's usually when dependencies get left behind, is when you uninstall a Flatpak application and it has those dependencies are all still installed in that Flatpak directory, and Flat Sweep is able to delete them for you. Another great app is called G4 Music. This is an amazing app I use every day for offline music listening. I have a bunch of music that I've downloaded, and yeah, it's really good. It gets updated really frequently now. The last one was literally 2 days ago. Yeah, it's like one of the best offline music players that you could probably use. Another one is called AMD, which is very similar in the design, I would say. But they're both like awesome GTK4 music applications. The other one is Halftone, which what this does is it converts your images into a pixel art style. This is really, really fucking cool, I would say. And there's all different types of ways that it will convert the image into like a certain type of kind of like filter or style. It says pixel art style, but it's basically just like, your filters that you have on like Google Photos, for example, with certain pictures you want to like edit. Another one is Impression, which is one of the, I would say, a really good GTK4 USB flasher. So if you want to flash a new Linux distro, I would definitely use this application for flashing. Another one that you can use, which is called Proton Plus. Now, this one's really important. This is for injecting different Proton versions into specific apps. So, for example, if you want to use the Proton GE versions, which is made by or maintained by Glorious Eggroll, it has certain patches applied to the normal, like experimental Proton version. You can inject those versions into Steam, Lutris, Bottles, Heroic. There's maybe some more applications, but I know that, like, let's say, Glorious Eggroll releases a Wine GE version, and Bottles or Lutris haven't brought in that version yet. They haven't like synced their servers to pick up that new version. Then you would use Proton Plus to inject it, and then you just restart the application, and then you'll be able to select it as a runner. One of the best applications that I really enjoy using is called Upscaler, which lets you upscale wallpapers. I have a bunch of upscaled wallpapers I could show you guys right now. Like this wallpaper right here is an upscaled version of like the original one. As you can see, it's like way more like higher resolution. Like the resolution is like insanely like huge. And there's different types of versions that you can pick from. Let's say you have like an anime cartoon style, then you can select that one, and it will like the way it will upscale, it will be like shorter. While if it's like a photo of like, I don't know, like a landscape or something like that, it will take like a lot longer, and it'll put like a lot more time and effort into like upscaling that image. Most of the time I'll just do cartoon slash anime because the majority of my wallpapers are like, stuff from like DC, like superheroes and all that type of stuff, or games. So that's a really good application, I would say. Another one would be GPU screen recorder. This is probably one of the best GPU screen recorders, which I use for my benchmark videos that I do with different types of games that I test on Linux. Instead of using OBS, which is what I'm using right now, this one is just a basic recorder that lets you pull in different audio inputs, so lets you select the different monitor, and it has like different frame rate options and like video quality, and you can even stream with it or do replaying. So if you want to like capture something with a game, like you hit a nice shot in a game, you can hit a specific key that will like record the past 30 seconds of you playing. And this works in both X11 and Wayland now, on either a AMD, Intel, or NVIDIA card. So I've used this on like when the first time it came out, I used it on my NVIDIA GPU. It worked amazing. And then I tried it when he brought over the AMD slash Intel support, and it also works because I've been using it now on my AMD RX 6700, and it does an amazing job at recording footage of my monitor. Another app is called Curtail, which is a application that lets you compress images. This is another fucking thing that I would have to do online. I would have to go to some website that I didn't really trust and upload an image to compress it into a specific format. And this is an amazing application that can do it for you, and it'll just use your hardware to compress it. It supports all types of different image formats, and it's there's also a lossless and lossy options. So like if you want an image to be really compressed and make it kind of look like shit, you can definitely do that. Another amazing app is called Cartridges. If you guys don't know what Cartridges is, it basically grabs all your games and it puts it into a library where you can quick launch them. So it supports Bottles, Lutris, Steam, flatpak applications now, Heroic, and it grabs all the game images from the Steam Grid DB website. So it's a really awesome GTK4 application if you want to launch your games really quickly. Another one, which I don't really have installed anymore, and basically what this does is it turns your images into text. The what's it called, like the ASCII characters. So if you have an image that you want to convert into a ASCII, so like those funny images that people copy and paste into text channels, that's You know, this is an app that can definitely do that for you. You can convert pictures, all types of different you know, picture formats into text. Another one which is really cool is Imaginer, which is literally just a AI for creating art. So it will grab, I forgot what it uses, like what AI, I think it's disable diffusion, something like that. But I've used it before and it works really well. And yeah, if you guys want to, like, you know, create art from an AI, you can just enter some prompts. You can choose the quality, and it will create some whatever you ask for it to make. Now, one of the main applications to install would be Bottles. This is a game for running Windows software, and it uses Wine, it uses Proton, it uses a bunch of different other things for creating like a bottle. And you know, each bottle is kind of like its own containerized wine prefix. So you can go in and you can change the runner dependencies, and it won't hurt the other bottles that you create. And I use this for, like, you know, if I want to play like maybe a pirated game, or if I want to play something like Overwatch or any Ubisoft games or Epic Games, any of that stuff, I would use Bottles. Or you can actually use Lutris as well. That's one of the favorites that lots of people like to use. Now, I don't personally like Lutris, as I don't really like the UI that much. And also when you like the script thing, how it's like all the scripts are like community based, like that's a really awesome thing. But sometimes they're outdated because the maintainer of that script doesn't update it quick enough. So that's why I use Bottles usually. And since I use an AMD GPU, I don't have to set up any like environment variables for anything when it comes to like playing a game or opening an application. So I'm all good there. But that is also another application that you could try that does have a lot of cool things. Like on the left side, you can like import like your game libraries and stuff like that, which is like another way to like quick launch your games. And yeah, the last one would probably be Heroic Games Launcher, which is just another way to play games on GOG, Epic Games, Amazon Games now. Or if you want to set up games manually, like, because it's basically the exact same as Lutris, where you can just create an application in your library and set up like a game or an app or something like that. And I've done plenty of tutorials on this in the past. Like a couple days ago, I did the League of Legends tutorial. Had to install it on here, and it went really well, I would say. And yeah, that's basically some of the apps that I use on a daily basis, I would say. So this is this went from installing Pop! OS to installing the apps that, you know, that I use. Just so if anyone doesn't know, that there's, you know, there's plenty of apps in the store already for you that do basically everything that you could do on a browser. I think they're really cool apps because they're, you know, they're open source. These developers, they don't get paid to do that stuff. They're uploading it for free basically. But yeah, if you guys like this video, give it a like. You guys can subscribe as well. We just hit 450 subs today, so thank you very much for the 450 subs. Hopefully we can get to 500. That would be really awesome. But you know, I don't really give a fuck at the same time. It's whatever. But if you guys had any issues, comment them down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.